Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hello and welcome, everyone. I am very thrilled to have board-certified wellness practitioner, nervous system mastery coach, and somatic practitioner, Karen Ann Canham, with us today. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay to just call you Karen? You prefer
Yes.
Karen Ann?
Karen's perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to read a little bit about Karen because we're going to talk all things nervous system. You guys know we love talking about all things nervous system. So she's going to help give us a few tips on how to improve our connection with that. Karen Ann Canham is a board-certified wellness practitioner, nervous system mastery coach, and somatic practitioner who specializes in helping leaders, entrepreneurs, and high-achieving individuals move out of chronic stress and into sustainable resilience. With nearly 2 decades of experience spanning corporate leadership and trauma-informed wellness, Karen brings a deeply grounded, real-world approach to nervous system regulation and embodied awareness. Her work integrates neuroscience-informed somatic practices, parts work, and nervous system education to help clients shift from survival-based reactivity into regulated presence. By teaching people how to listen to and work with their bodies, Karen supports clearer thinking, stronger leadership presence, emotional resilience, and long-term well-being. She is the author of From Reactivity to Resilience, a practical guide that outlines her framework for creating lasting personal and professional transformation by strengthening nervous system capacity and somatic awareness. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. Thanks for having me.
Well, I love what you do. And I am, a somatic practitioner myself. I help people reconnect with their nervous system in order to tune in and listen to their bodies and trust their bodies. So you and I are really aligned in our approach. I would love to know what inspired you to get into this work, particularly nervous system regulation and somatic awareness. And what led you to work with leaders and high achievers?
Yeah, so my journey started in my 20s on my healing process, and I did a lot of therapy. I was recovering from anorexia, which started when I was much younger, but I didn't get the treatment for it until adulthood. And when I got out of that treatment center, the feedback that I got from people, the other people that were in the treatment center with me as patients, right, were like, everything that you did so great. And the thing that's still going to hinder you is that you allow people to affect you too much. And it was true. And it, it wasn't to the point where it was ruining my life per se. It was successful in my corporate career. I was able to climb ladders and get to positions and, live in expensive areas. But I still was so affected by what was going on around me. And it caused a lot of stress. It caused a lot of just unhappiness. And when I found the nervous system work, that was changed everything for me. That was a thing that finally got me over that hump. And then I wasn't so affected by what was going on around me. And so my journey in this wellness world was one that I was doing it on the side as I was climbing this corporate career. And it started more of a nutritional aspect of food and why, how you can eat mindfully and why it's so important of what you're putting in your body based off of my whole eating experience, right? And movement and things like that. Which is all important, and I still incorporate that. I am certified in functional medicine as well, but this piece that I was able to come in contact with about the nervous system was just totally transformative in my life. These other pieces were kind of like it's managing me, and my symptoms are managed, and I feel managed and things are okay, but it was still kind of like there has to be a way to feel more in like the flow of life, and this almost like childlike, I would explain it, of going back to how we felt before all of these whatever stressors happened in our life. So that's what really led me to this work, and it really takes a specific type of person to want to be able to do this work. And I do find that most people that I come in contact with are a little bit leery of what this work is, and what's going to open for them, and kind of want to stay in that more of that status quo. Um, but yeah, the people that I do end up working with, the most beautiful part of it is how much that ripple effect happens and how much they're able to change, that energy, and how people are responding to them around them.
Yes. Oh, I love how you describe it as returning to a childlike energy. This is actually something I just delivered a TEDx talk exactly about that, especially in the age of what we're seeing going on with weight loss medications. I am really glad to hear of your recovery. And I do think that people who struggle with eating disorders, really people in general, struggle with their nervous system. And I like to help people understand that it's really about a lot of their attachments from their childhood and how they have learned how to navigate the world based on that. And I think when we look at it from an attachment based lens, we can see that a lot of people, they'll develop anxious or avoidant, disorganized attachment styles. But all of that means is that you and your body are not feeling safe. And what kinds of coping mechanisms do we develop through our lifespan to navigate this unsafe feeling? And working through the nervous system actually helps to achieve safety in the body. And that's usually what we felt when we were little kids and we were tuned in and tapped into our nervous system, but also kind of the greater kind of world and consciousness and nature and everything when we're calm. And when we're calm, we can do pretty much anything. And I love that um, how you found your way back to your calm nervous system after all of those series of stressors. For listeners who are new to this, how do you explain nervous system regulation and somatic awareness in a way that feels practical and approachable?
Yeah, I really loved how you just explained that. I explain it in a way of um, most of us have not been aware of our bodies for a long time. And to be able to get into our bodies can be challenging. And that really is the beginning of the work. And I do use language that it sounds really silly for us to be able to say, like, just take 10 seconds of like feeling your desk, and then what texture are you feeling? What colors are you seeing in your desk? But those little minute things that you can do creates that safety in your system. It tells your body that you're present in this present moment. And then it starts to take this ripple effect of where your brain starts to feel safe. Um, that's the beginning of it. And then I like to say it's important that, we start small and then we go into these bigger steps of being able to work in more of these attachment styles, which I speak to more of parts. And I say these things developed when we were children, usually from the age of 3 to 7, and they're there for a reason. And then, we want to start to uncover, are they still working for us? Are they hindering us from where we want to be? What are they doing for us? Where do they show up in our body? What are the sensations related to that? Because if I know what those sensations are, I know that I can quicker evaluate when that part's showing up. And then I can decide, is this part getting in the way of my present moment? Is it taking over? Am I living in my past right now? Um, and the language that we create around these parts is a compassionate one. They exist. We all have them. They're not going to go away. They serve a purpose. And creating this relationship with them is really life-changing for yourself. But then when you start to recognize that in other people as well, it really can create more compassion of how we show up for us and for other people.
I love that so much. I do think that true change in terms of the way that we think or the way that we're reacting to the world or whatever we've, gotten from our childhood or whatever part is showing up, we can't really change that just cognitively. We need to create safety in the body first and then be able to explore whether or not these parts or our ways of dealing with things or whatever, we have gotten from our attachment styles are actually working for us. And I love that you take people on a mindfulness journey. I love exercises like that, like, naming 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. I love helping people get into that mindfulness state because it really is that beautiful, connected flow state. And when they're in that state, they're able to really objectively look at the ways that they've been working with and dealing with things, and then be able to change them from that calm nervous system state. So really good work that you're doing out there. Let's talk about high achieving individuals. They're usually up there in their heads. They're cognitively driven, strategy driven. How does developing some body-based awareness change how they perform under pressure? What is the value of learning how to regulate the body and then perform?
Yeah, a lot of people that I work with are high achieving. These are people that come to me and do this type of work, are very aware, they're very insightful, they're in their heads. And my work and what my job is to get them into their body, which usually is extremely difficult in the beginning. They want to talk. They want to come in and they want to verbalize what's going on and they want to talk about it. And it's my job to kind of bring them back, bring them out of these loops that they're in, and bring them into their body. And high achieving people, usually what I see what's going on with them is they are going, and they will get to a point where their system just stops them in their tracks. And so they're in this place of really more of this hyperactive type of state, very busy, can be anxious. And then they're in this state of just like depletion, collapsed, shut down. And they're going back and forth between that. And so part of the work that I do is educating them on what's happening physiologically. And that helps them, right? Because it's cognitive, it's top down. And so they start to understand what's happening with them, and that when we ignore our system, that is what is creating the problem, and how much energy is being wasted on all this back and forth that we're doing. And really, even though we're calling ourselves high achieving, we're not achieving nearly as much as we could achieve if we were more in this regulated place. So that usually helps them. And of course, there's more science that goes into that, letting them know like our body is communicating 80% up to the brain and 20% down. So if we're only working on that brain, there's miscommunication going on, right? And so that helps them then to understand. And then the titration piece of the work that we do of like slowly getting them into the body, they see the effects. They may not like it at first, but when they start to see the effects and they start to see, how that they're able to achieve so much more, because ultimately they're not going to stop achieving. That's not the goal. The goal is to help them be able to work in a way that they're not like overextending themselves and then collapsing.
Why don't they like it at first?
It's uncomfortable. I mean, that's not what they're used to, right? They're used to being in their head, and so then being able to, feel sensations in your body usually can be very I feel like a lot of anxiety. We're not used to feeling those sensations. It's like, well, feel what does your heart feel like right now? Is it beating fast? Is it beating slow? Do you feel fluttering? We can go through a lot of different things, but to be able to sit there and feel into these sensations, feel what emotions may be coming up is extremely uncomfortable. And as a practitioner, which we have to be careful to, titrate them in so it's not too much on their system at once.
Yes, totally. I am curious in terms of what you have observed as the reasons why people might become high achievers or that are very, very success driven. What are you seeing in your clients? And I'll just give a little peek into mine. I think it ranges. There's a whole gamut of reasons why people might be highly driven from, coming from people pleasing backgrounds and feeling like they have to be perfect, to, coming from really punitive backgrounds where either you go all the way or you're in trouble, to some that are, just really just about, success driven, not really a lot of like trauma informed reasons for them to become super high achievers. What are you seeing with your clients?
I see that most people, when they talk to me about the dynamics growing up with their mother and father, was that it was a one that could be critical. I see that a lot, highly critical. It was never enough. It was that sometimes the mother or the father, it's like they didn't get to where they wanted to be, and so now they're putting a lot of pressure on their child to get there. They're rewarded, they're praised by things that they do achieve. So it could be none of those things, and it could just be like when they get good grades or when they won their sports game, then they're like praised for that. So those types of things are what I see. It varies in the severity of like what people went through. And, we can talk about trauma and how that shows up differently for everybody. And there's so many factors that go involved. But yeah, all those things that you said, those, if we're perfectionistic, we're usually high achieving as well.
Yes. And I do think, that's probably the most common presentation that I see in women is, the perfectionism that comes from people pleasing. And I think, if we do look at it from an attachment lens or even a parts lens, the reasons why we do that is to achieve safety. If I can make everyone around me happy, if I can do everything perfectly, then I will have a safe environment. And I think it's so important for people, if you're out there listening, oh my God, that's me. Holy cow. That, achievements, they're wonderful. There's nothing wrong with, wanting to be a high achiever. But if it is costing you in your body, in your nervous system, there is a way through that. And I think, looking at things, had a guest who coined it progress, not perfection, taking some of the pressure off, but also realizing that you can still achieve things, through a calm nervous system state. It might not look the same, and you might be looking for a different metric. The more you do this work, it might be a little bit less about pleasing other people and more about, does this satisfy me? Does this work for me? Turning the focus from the external validation into the internal validation. And that also comes from somatic awareness. So I love that we're seeing eye to eye on that as well. Let's talk a little bit about your book, From Reactivity to Resilience. You talk about moving out of survival mode, and this is kind of what we've been talking about, is coming from a survival mode standpoint. What does that shift look like in everyday life and in leadership?
Well, this all started about what I said in the beginning of this not being so affected by people around me, or, what was going on in the world. I am sensitive. I'm very empathetic. I can feel people's emotions. So there was a lot that was involved in that. But when I wrote that book, I actually had not gone through the nervous system work that I have gone through now. So this is interesting. What I was doing at that time was more of a management type of thing. I was meditating, I was doing mindfulness, and none of these things are wrong. They're great. They're great tools. And everybody's different, what's going to work for them, right? But the nervous system work is something that um, changes your way of being. I didn't have that experience from like yoga or my meditation practice. There was definitely shifts, and I changed in like the way that I was. But as far as like the work and in your nervous system recalibrating, it feels very different. It feels like that child that you were before. I really can't explain it in any other way. And so this book that I wrote really was based off of a lot of struggles that I was having in my career. I mean, I was in a male dominated industry, and there was a lot of things that were really hard for me to deal with. And I really didn't know how to deal with them. And, obviously it's never appropriate to react in the workplace. So a lot of what was happening with me is something was happening that wasn't okay for me. I didn't know what to do in that situation. In terms of like, I didn't feel safe, I just didn't feel safe at all. And so um, then it was staying in my system. I wasn't doing anything with it. It was just staying in my system. And I was like trying to manage this and keep like pushing forward and ultimately kind of ignoring it. Um, so I guess that book kind of really came to be about there's all these modalities that you can use as far as things that I had just mentioned. But um, I'll be honest and say, like, if I went back and rewrote that book, which I am writing a different book right now, that it would be very different. And what I feel like is the not the that's not how I want to say it. Just what I feel like is really the way of feeling at peace. Yeah, so I wasn't, with all those things that I was doing, I didn't feel like that child, I didn't feel like that. And so the more that I got into this nervous system work, that was coming to me as like, that's how I want to feel. I don't want to feel like I'm pushing and striving and all these things that are out there that I'm supposed to be doing to be well, which are helpful and did help me. But it started to feel like it just wasn't right.
Yeah. I think there are a lot. There's so many tools out there. There's so many things. There is meditation, there's affirmation, there's mantra work, there's yoga. There are so many ways that we can reduce our stress, and that is all valuable. Pilates, that's my go-to. I love getting into my body and releasing tension through movement. However, if you're doing that and your nervous system is not regulated, it does not help you as much as if you really learn how to regulate the nervous system. To give people kind of a picture to how to get to that childlike state, but we talked about these grounding exercises, but you can do that so simply through your breath. If your exhale is longer than your inhale, and you're doing this for even like 2 minutes, and you just focus on counting out your breaths, you'll start to feel just this kind of light ease in your body. She is talking about that childlike state. That's when we kind of, do this on a more regular basis for a longer period of time. What tends to happen for people is the sense of wonder returns. that sense, like when you would go out into nature, that can be achieved on a regular basis, guys. And that can enhance any other stress management tool that you are working with. So we're going to get into that a little bit more, maybe with some specific exercises that we can do in the second half of this podcast. Out of time for this first one, but I think we've gotten so much great information about how to really kind of learn how to tap into our nervous system and achieve that sense of well-being and peace. So thank you, Karen, for coming for this first half. And I know you're going to join me for the second half. And I really hope everyone else joins us as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Insight Podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Insight Podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.